Howdy, all you delicious people. I'm here today to review Titans Season 3, Episode 1 through 3. So, going into this show, I think a lot of people make the quick consensus that this show does kind of copy and paste a lot of Under the Red Hood, animated movie or comic books. And probably for a lot of people that probably have not seen either one of those things will immediately just be like, oh man, this story is so cool because I never watched anything before this, or I never whatever, I didn't know any of this stuff existed. Man, this seems awesome. But it's just all of this is some of this has technically happened before, but it seems like they do a different approach to it, or they try something different with this one. I can say that this story is really interesting compared to definitely the last season, which I thought definitely the last season freaking sucked. This one feels at least a little bit better. It feels like they're actually trying something here, that can give us something interesting. We also bizarrely have too many moments where people are just randomly talking to themselves, seemingly, which I'm just baffled or confused about. We have moments where Starfire is supposedly blacking out and talking to herself as Stargirl or 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 Starfire, whatever. Starfire. Yeah, let's get in. Let's talk about that. Uh, Starfire bizarrely has black hair in this show. I guess they really just wanted to just, dude, we don't want to have to dye her hair orange or purple or whatever, so let's just dye it. Let's just dye it just a normal color. And every once in a while, we'll probably just CGI her color in or whatever. It's obvious that, they're trying to avoid, or maybe they just retconned Stargirl in this show. I don't know. Beast Boy is still a tiger in the show. But he seems that he's going to be something different, maybe a snake, maybe more than a snake, but I highly doubt it because it's already been 3 episodes, and what Bubkiss thing has he done already? Nothing. So it's just expecting us to just have this guy still not drastically changing from any other animal in this show. So they should have killed this character off last season, obviously. They can't do anything with his character. So why does this character still exist? I don't get this character. I don't understand this at all. What is the point of switching it from the DC thing to HBO? And assuming that HBO has more money, but you beg to differ because we're still with Beast Boy, who's still Tiger, and that's it. Superboy is still just a character that's here. I guess, there's a part where he is to, actually have a story in 3 episodes. In 3 episodes, he actually has a story. But again, this, of course, this is yet another season where they have to rest on Dick Grayson in this episode. We start to see a little bit more Gotham, if you know what I mean. When we go into spoiler sense, I'll tell you what I mean by that. Hawk and Dove is still much more relevant characters than anyone else in this cast. We don't even see Raven or what is her name? Rachel Roth. We haven't seen her in 3 episodes. Man, is that great. That's not annoying at all. The character that we were supposed to be having carry a season is not even in this season, because they could have went with some other direction. I guess season 2 was hey man, we focus way too much on a Raven, so we're gonna have to just eventually have that character probably show up in the last episode for her to do something. What a disappointing roster of characters, because I don't really understand what good are any of these characters. They rest too much on Nightwing and Hawk and Dove, and everyone else is just there. they have a whole group of people, but most of them are just there. And the key focusing is always on Nightwing. Nightwing has to do so many things solo. He has to go and talk to certain characters, and he's on his own. Like, what is the point of having a group if really this could have just been called the Dick Grayson show, or this could have been called the Nightwing show? Because it doesn't feel like a group effort here. Like, it kind of feels like Birds of Prey to me, where I'm just like, why is there still so much going on with one character compared to everyone else? Like, this feels like a clickbaiting thing. That's to still say this is not the Titans show, because a group is not always a thing that matters here. It just matters that, oh, well, we're still going to focus on Dick Grayson. Great. Like, freaking, like, it should have been called Gotham then, or it should have been called something else. It shouldn't have been called Titans, because this does not feel like Titans. Still, 3 seasons later, it feels too much is carried on to Brenton's shoulders, really. It is. So with that said, I think let's go into spoilers about these 3 episodes. Kind of talk out about them. Like, I probably might not go into huge detail about every single episode. There might be just some important spots that I might talk about here. Because really there's also some repetitiveness that also happens in certain episodes as well. So let's get into it. Let's go into spoiler time. Spoiler time. It's about that time we can do spoil this episode. So really just the first part of this is to basically help us figure out what is going to go on with Jason Todd in this season. So Jason Todd is to eventually talk to Batman and say, hey, Batman, like, because you're wherever on a plane or somewhere a million miles away, just letting you know, hey, like, Joker is being loose in the city, like, what should we do? And Bruce is telling Jason, it's like, well, like, nothing, because, like, you're not ready. Like, you're not ready to go at this alone. So, weirdly, Jason is to go and take this bizarrish, like, asthmatic with a medical mask on thing, which I'm just like, okay, what is that? Is that to be, like, steroids? Is it to be some kind of drug? Like, is it supposed to be, like, an anti-Joker thing? When Joker was to have that, like, Joker gas, is that the antidote from that? Or is that, like, it has to be some kind of concoction or whatever. I don't know if they said it or not. There has to be some kind of, like, thing that is to be some kind of maybe performance enhancer that Jason is taking. Or maybe there's some kind of concoction that, like, when combined together, just, I don't know. Anyways, so pushing on. So Jason is to eventually go into this place where all of a sudden there's this, like, circus-looking, Jack-in-the-Box looking. It's kind of like the Riddler, where the opening of the Riddler's home in Batman Forever, where the Riddler goes in and there's this one little device that has this finger going back and forth on the yes or no kind of thing. It's kind of like that, where you see this, like, little toy that has this, like, character in there kind of just bouncing around and looking all creepy. And then all of a sudden we see Joker from behind Jason, and he's just crowbarring him to death. And so it's like, oh, okay, so Jason Todd is dead in the beginning of this episode. Wow, what a surprise that is. But also, they bizarrely can't show Joker in this show. They try to make it look like it's not Joker, or they can't bizarrely show the head of this person. I don't know why that is. Like, is it some royalty thing that they're trying to avoid, like, showing you this person, so that way they don't have to pay some kind of royalty or some kind of something for the Joker? Like, are they trying to avoid it? Like, what are they doing? Why are they trying to avoid not showing a Joker in this show? Like, I guess because if he's not like like an actual character that is being used in here, then it's like, hey man, we don't want any royalties going out for anybody. Like, because Joker is a really expensive freaking character, and so let's just show the back of him, or let's just barely show him, so that way, like, you can't really tell what he is, even though they say obviously, oh, it was the Joker that killed Jason Todd. So, uh, so what eventually happens after Jason's death is Bruce Wayne is to be cleaning off the blood from Jason's costume, and it's really tough to clean off the blood, is what we find out from Bruce. And so we end up finding out that there's this kid that seems to have this infinity, or this love for Batman, and he ends up putting these bat signals on his bike while he is to drop off, I'm assuming, newspapers to people. And there's a bunch of cops that are like, hey, like, you have the bat signal on your bike there, buddy? Like, freaking, he's a vigilante, right? He's a murderer or whatever. So, but anyways, so Dick is to go into the Batcave, or Grayson is to go in the Batcave to spot that Bruce is already recruiting for Jason's replacement. There's a number of names with a number of faces that are in some spot, and Grayson is just like, Bruce, really? Like, you're already, like, you probably already had this, like, piped in or tuned up before, like, Jason's body was even cold. Like, why is it that you're gonna go and continue to, like, just find another person that you can manipulate and freaking just have him turn out just like Jason did? But we have Bruce is just kind of like, well, you know what, you can be Robin again if you want. And Grayson is like, no. Like, no, I don't want to, no. And so it's really just to the point where Bruce is just almost wanting to give Grayson, just give away the Batcave. Like, give away, like, him being Batman. Because I don't think Bruce can take it anymore. To the point of eventually, we have a spot where I think supposedly Bruce had killed the Joker. Had taken the crowbar to him and just caved his skull in, supposedly. And like, Bruce's face just has blood on it, and you can see the crowbar on the ground, but you can't exactly tell whether or not the Joker is dead. But I guess you just have to make the consensus. So we have a spot in this episode, because I'm going to bounce around a little bit. So we immediately have some time that I guess has passed from Jason Todd's death. So we have this guy named Red Hood who is eventually going and getting all these gangs together and killing all their second in commands, basically showing every one of these big head honcho guys that, hey, like, I killed your second in command. Like, I did that in a whole day. Just imagine if I had a week. Blah, blah, blah. Like, this is a very under the Red Hood moment. So Red Hood is telling the guys, hey, like, you give me 40% and I'll protect you from anybody. There is no Black Mask in here, I guess. So, like, he'll protect you from from Batman. So that ends up playing out. So Dick Grayson is going and wanting to go and see the Scarecrow to talk to him. And so Dick goes to prison to talk to Scarecrow, and Dick is telling, like, the Scarecrow, it's like, dude, you know who exactly I am. Like, you know I'm freaking, like, I've been Robin and Nightwing and whatever, you know. Because, like, the Scarecrow is just like, why are you here? Why are you talking to me? And so we not only have the Scarecrow moment once, but we have it twice. Like, we don't have the Scarecrow in actual, like, makeup. It's just Crane, who's just, like, kind of, you can just, it's the guy from Buffy. or not Buffy, Angel. Yeah, Angel. So pushing on here, we find out that Hawk and Dove have separated, and it seems that it'll take. Hawk and Dove is separated. Hawk has supposedly been like a bicycle policeman, and so he even like almost tells people that he used to be Hawk from Hawk and Dove. Like one of the guys that he's working with is like, "Hey man, you seem kind of skilled." It's like, how is it that you like do things so well? And so we have Hank who's like, well, that's because I used to like wear like spandex, and I used to like dress as a bird and all this and that. And so we have Hank who is to eventually find out that Dove is going and seemingly working with Dick, and so Hank is just like, well, I'm gonna join the party. Freaking like, I don't want to be a cop anymore. I just want to go and just freaking bust some heads and wear my Hawk costume again. So, eventually we don't see like Raven at all, but I think at one point we have Beast Boy, who ends up going and talking to Raven, I guess through some mental telepathy or something, or some kind of something. I don't know. It seemed weird. We also have Starfire, who ends up talking to a therapist of hers because I guess they hooked up once upon a time, and so like they're just kind of like talking about old times. Eventually, we end up finding out that Starfire somewhere in this episode or in these episodes is eventually having blackouts, and all of a sudden she's, I guess, talking in her alien language that no one understands. And Starfire eventually uses her powers on, I think, Superboy and Beast Boy by accident, and then they're like, oh crap, like what's going on with her? So there's a lot of times when we have Nightwing who is to eventually go and do some work in Gotham, because Bruce Wayne has basically told like Dick, hey, like you can have Gotham, like you go ahead and you can just take control over it. And so Grayson is telling all of the Titans like, hey, like Gotham isn't like San Francisco, so like we're gonna have to do things differently here. And it's like, okay, here. So we don't have a Commissioner Gordon in this episode because I think that's been done a lot, and so they try to avoid it by having Barbara Gordon being the police chief. Oh, Bruce Wayne also is to have told us when he is to supposedly have buried Jason that he's buried right next to Alfred. So I'm like, oh, so Alfred is actually dead in this show? That kind of sucks, because like I think they've used Alfred a lot, so more than likely they're like, yeah, we need to just have Alfred be dead, sadly. And I guess there's not going to be another Alfred, or I guess there's probably not going to be a Lucius Fox in this show, because there's technically a Luke Fox or whatever in Batwoman, so I guess like they can't do a Lucius Fox in this. Man, would that suck, right? To just have an actual like what? Anyways, moving on. So we can't have Morgan Freeman in this show because he's too expensive. So so eventually, what ends up happening in these episodes is so we have a person who has this who did this video that was sent to the police department, where this woman is to be frightened beyond belief, and she ends up putting a red hood over her head. And we have Grayson who's like, oh, red hood, like that's what the Joker used to do. Like, I wonder why, because the Red Hood, the people he forced to work with, are now having to do all these shenanigans. So we end up finding out that this woman had this huge duffel bag or something, this bag with her. And so this woman ends up going into this camera, putting on this red hood, and then eventually walking past this one bag and walking into this escalator, or yeah, to eventually get out of this place, because eventually this place is going to detonate with this explosive. So that's when all of a sudden they're like, oh my god, like, we need to take out whatever this new threat is. So what ends up happening is supposedly there's a number of parents that had all of their kids, all of their kids were kidnapped. And so all these parents were forced to put on these red hoods and supposedly rob this bank. And so the Titans now have to go and try and prevent this bank robbery and try to find the right people for this task, or try to find the right people, like the kids or whatever, to try to save these, whatever. Anyways, so the Titans are going all suited up, and so what we end up finding out is, so the gang goes into this place and they're like, hey man, you don't have to do this. Like, if anything, we're going to find your kids for you. Everything's going to be fine. So all of a sudden, one of the members of this Red Hood gang take off their mask to eventually find out it's a completely different person. A guy filled with tattoos and all kinds of stuff. And they're like, oh my god, this is not one of the actual parents. And so all of a sudden we just see that eventually Beast Boy is to find a whole entire van with the actual parents that have been taken. And he's like, oh my god, this isn't even like... this whole thing is just kind of like a lie or a trick or whatever, and we're going to see that a lot. So they detonate an explosive to go and try to kill off the Titans, but that doesn't quite work out. So eventually what ends up happening is Grayson is to eventually get confronted with this Red Hood character, and what ends up happening is we have Nightwing, who ends up using his weapons and trying to eventually electrify Red Hood and try to take him down. We end up, of course, having the Red Hood mask getting broken, because I guess this Red Hood mask is so freaking flimsy, right? This is supposed to protect this guy's life, but freaking, I guess it's just flimsy, right? So we see a hole in a part of the mask to showcase who this person is, and of course it's Jason Todd. Like, wow, what a surprise. I've only had a number of comic books. I've only had a number of, like, animated things. I've only, like, the surprise is just, what if they would have really switched this whole thing? And wouldn't it have been amazing if you would have actually found out that instead of it being Jason Todd in this story, it finally was Bruce Wayne, who had technically been a villain in another season? What if Bruce Wayne would have been Red Hood? Man, would that have just, like, whoa! Like, at least that would have been some kind of interesting spin on this, instead of having us going back to the exact same well that we've technically already gone through too many times. Like, some little tiny shift of something would have been just a little bit fun. But whatever, I guess. Just whatever. Whatever. So we end up having what happens in this show is we still have these, like, catch-up moments where Nightwing or Grayson is talking to Hank and kind of catching up on how, like, he was a bike policeman, and like, kind of talking about, like, Hank's relationship with Dove, and that, like, Grayson couldn't have that work out, to where it's like, hey man, I even tried and it didn't work out that well. Like, and plus also I think Nightwing was also talking about, like, him and Barbara not working out also, I guess. I don't know. No, I think the relationship he was talking about was Barbara, was talking about Barbara, not Dove. I don't know, I'm so confused. Uh yeah, it was Barbara. But they're rarely like working anyways consistently with one another. And we'll see who eventually, especially towards the end of episode 3, where exactly all this heads. So, because what ends up happening is Jason Todd is eventually going and calling Hank to say, "Hey man, like I need your help. Uh, like if anything, like don't tell any of the other Titans, but I'm really having problems here, and I really want you to come help me, so that way like we can like I can just figure things out." So Hank is to say like, "Hey man, I'll go alone," because supposedly Hank is kind of this like bullheaded guy where he's just like, "Oh yeah, I can just solve everything by himself." So what ends up happening is Hank is to eventually get this bizarre scavenger hunt. Uh, like we have him eventually going into certain spots of Gotham, which is to eventually lead him to the Gotham's gym into this pool area. Uh, and so what ends up happening is Hank ends up having to take off all of his clothes, and I mean every single one of his clothes, because supposedly he might have a wire on him, and so that's not all. Like this place is just like disheveled, and like nobody like is here anymore. Um, like there was one spot where like supposedly like Hank had to go and find this one piece at this one spot, and Hank was calling Jason. It's like there better be a meal at the end of all this scrambling around. So eventually, what ends up happening is Hank is to go and swim, and at the very other end of the pool, Red Hood is to meet him and is to knock him out. So what is to happen is Hank is to wake up with a bomb strapped to his chest. That is to, I guess, like the amount of heart rate that he is to have is really just how long that he's going to live for, but also how long before the bomb that he is to have is to detonate. So, uh, so we have Hank who ends up going and like telling Titans, "Hey, like look, bomb on my chest. Isn't this great?" So you guys have to kind of figure this out. So uh the Titans end up finding out that this bomb is some kind of Gotham tech or Wayne Enterprise tech. So coincidentally they have like the blueprints of this whole thing, and so Superboy has to like quickly read all of this, and now he, who's not a tech expert, has to just bizarrely come up with this device to be the turning off thing of this bomb. And so what ends up happening is now like we have Grayson and we have Dove, who is doing this alternative mission to eventually get Jason Todd what he wants. And when Dove is to eventually arrive to talk to Jason, and like I think we get this moment where Dove is trying to trade her life for Hank's and so on and so forth, and so we have this moment where Jason Todd is to be holding on to this like button that is to eventually like release Hank from his like bomb, is to stop his all Dove needs to do is just take this gun and shoot Jason, and and all of this will stop. And so Dove is to now like contemplate shooting Jason, and Grayson is to be there trying to stop Dove from shooting Jason. And so like they're battling over it, and so Grayson is telling Dove, it's like, don't do this, you'll regret this decision forever. Ba 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 ba. So what ends up happening is Dove is to eventually go and like as Superboy is basically coming up with this this counter of this bomb, and he ends up coming up with it in the last like seemingly seconds of this. So Superboys eventually run to get to Hank's room, and so Dove goes and pulls the trigger to shoot Jason, and the gun doesn't fire. We find out that supposedly Jason Todd had put the detonator in Dove's hands, which was the gun, and her going and trying to shoot Jason was to explode Hank's device. So by the time that Superboy makes it to counteract this bomb, he's too late because the room is already like on fire. And so Superboy was too late. So Hank is to be dead, obviously. Like there's some interesting moments where Hank was talking to Beast Boy, and he was also talking to Nightwing. Hank was talking about like ordering a thing of pizza, and how supposedly Hank likes his pizza with pineapple and God, what was the other one? Green? No, it wasn't green pepper. Jalapenos, because he likes it hot going in and hot coming out. Weirdly. So like we have Hank exchanging this conversation with Grayson, and so like it's a really nice moment, but like we know that really the Titans just suck at their job. Like with 3 episodes, we're just gonna have like frickin' Jason just consistently getting the better of all these characters, which is gonna be frickin' sad. But I feel like that's just going to be a meant to thing happen. Like, I think that we're just going to start seeing one by one, people are just going to be like freaking just chopping off or just dying off, which is going to be sad. But like, I'm kind of expecting them to do something with Barbara, which is like, I think they've done enough with that character technically. But like, I think they're going to do something with her because reasonably, like that's a woman that Nightwing was really close to, and so yeah, like I'm assuming they're gonna do something with him, or something with Barbara. So, with that said, yeah, severely undetailed, but really just remembering all the things that happened through a bulk of these episodes. Like the story, I think would just be called maybe interesting enough. Like, at least it's better than the last season, but yeah, it's just copy and paste, or it's just like, man, they focus way too much on Grayson, and it's just sad. It's sad how this feels so centered on Grayson. Every story has to, like, they can't just have, like from season 1 on, like, everything has to do something with Grayson. And I get, like, but yeah, this is gonna be a Red Hood centered like thing, so it has to be with Chase. I get that, like I get it, but when looking at every single season, like everything has to do with Grayson. Like, is no one else? Does anyone like nobody else has any villains that they can put in here? Like, are they just trying to just like? There's a lot of copy and paste through a lot of just Batman or Teen Titans stories here. None of it completely feels origin-like at all. And that's what just kind of sucks about the show, is it just feels like recycling of things that seemingly has already been a successful thing. So they're just like, well, let's go back at it again. Let's go redoing it again. But at least this season just feels better. There seems to be more money seemingly into this, even though Beast Boy would not tell you that. Um, but yeah, so I honestly can't wait for other episodes to come out. Um, and it's really like these episodes are creative, no matter what I've said about them. Um, Maybe not original, but like creative. So I think that's all I wanted to say about this one. Man, there's probably a lot of stuff that I forgot about, but there's little tiny dialogues in here. Beast Boy doesn't feel like relevant character. Like we had the one spot where Superboy was mentioning that does Superman have like a library or something like that? And it's like, so Superman has not even like met Superboy yet. Um, like we still don't have like Beast Boy hanging out or anything with the Doom Patrol because he has nothing better to do throughout most of the show. Uh, like there was like one funny moment where like Nightwing and Hank were having this moment where Hank was going through the refrigerator and going and eating some meat food, and Nightwing is like, "Hey, that's for crypto," and so Hank has to like put it back in the fridge. He's like, "Nah, like okay, great, like I basically ate dog food." But yeah, but I think that's it. I hope that's it. I don't know, like, whatever. Anyways, I'm gonna get out of here. Bye, everybody. Bye, everybody.